Every day, millions of people make promises to themselves. I'm going to start tomorrow. This time I'll stick with it. I'm finally going to change my life. And for a little while, they believe it. They buy the gym membership. They begin the project. They apply for the course. They make the plan. Then something happens. They stop showing up. They lose motivation. They convince themselves it wasn't the right time. And eventually, they end up exactly where they started. Most people think this is laziness or a lack of discipline. But what if that's completely wrong? What if the biggest obstacle in your life isn't a lack of motivation? It's a part of your brain that's desperately trying to protect you. Because the truth is, self-sabotage rarely feels like sabotage. It feels like common sense. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. Your brain doesn't wait for you to calculate the risks. It immediately tells you to step back. That instinct has kept humans alive for thousands of years. The problem is, your brain can't always tell the difference between physical danger and psychological danger. To your subconscious, being rejected, embarrassed, failing publicly, looking stupid, losing certainty, all of these can trigger the exact same alarm system. So when you decide to change your life, your brain doesn't celebrate. It asks a different question. Is this safe? And if the answer is uncertain, it starts pulling the brakes. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it thinks staying exactly where you are is the safest option. That's the first thing most people never realize. Self-sabotage isn't your brain working against you. It's your brain trying to protect you, using outdated rules. Think about procrastination. People often describe it as poor time management. But research suggests it's much more emotional than practical. When a task makes you anxious, your brain looks for immediate relief. Scrolling your phone, watching another video, cleaning your room, anything that removes the uncomfortable feeling. Notice something. The goal isn't productivity. The goal is emotional escape. The relief feels small, but your brain remembers it. Every time you avoid discomfort, your brain learns something dangerous. Avoiding works. Over weeks, months, sometimes years, avoidance becomes automatic. Until one day, you genuinely believe you've become a procrastinator, when in reality, you've simply trained your brain to protect itself from discomfort. This is where self-sabotage becomes incredibly convincing. Because your brain doesn't whisper, "I'm stopping you from succeeding." It tells a much more believable story. You'll start when you're ready. You need to do more research. Maybe next week. You should wait for the perfect opportunity. Those thoughts sound rational. Sometimes they even sound responsible. But if you hear them often enough, they become invisible. You stop questioning them. You assume they're true, when they're often nothing more than fear wearing the mask of logic. Then something even stranger starts happening. You begin avoiding the very things you say you want. The promotion, the relationship, the business, the healthier lifestyle. Not because you don't want them, but because they come with uncertainty. And uncertainty is something your brain has evolved to dislike. Think about it. Your current situation may not be ideal, but it's familiar. Your brain knows how to survive it. Success, however, comes with new expectations, new responsibilities, new risks. Ironically, the unknown future can feel more threatening than a disappointing present. That's why people sometimes stay in jobs they hate, remain in unhealthy relationships, or never pursue the opportunities they constantly dream about. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. One of the biggest forms of self-sabotage doesn't even look negative. It's perfectionism. At first glance, perfectionism looks like high standards. But underneath, it's often fear. Because if your work is never finished, it can never be judged. If you never launch, you never fail. If you endlessly prepare, you never discover whether you're actually capable. Perfection becomes a hiding place, not a strength. Many people spend years trying to produce the perfect first attempt, without realizing the first attempt was never supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to teach you what comes next. There's another layer that's even deeper. Identity. Every person carries around a story about who they are. I'm shy. I'm unlucky. I'm always late. I'm just not disciplined. These sentences seem harmless, but your brain treats identity differently than goals. Goals can change. Identity resists change. If you've spent years believing you're someone who always gives up, then succeeding creates conflict, because success no longer matches your identity, and the brain dislikes internal contradiction. Sometimes, people don't sabotage their goals. They sabotage anything that threatens the story they've been telling themselves. This explains something psychologists have observed for years. Some people get incredibly close to achieving what they want, and suddenly, everything falls apart. They stop trying. They miss deadlines. They lose focus. They quit. From the outside, it makes no sense. But from the brain's perspective, it does. Getting closer means bigger changes, more uncertainty, higher expectations, more opportunities to fail. The closer success becomes, the louder your protective instincts can get. Here's the part most people never hear. You cannot beat self-sabotage by declaring war on yourself. Calling yourself lazy, weak, or broken only reinforces the identity your brain is trying to protect. Instead, you have to become curious. The next time you catch yourself avoiding something important, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What is my brain trying to protect me from?" That single question changes everything. Because now, you're working with your mind instead of fighting it. Maybe it's fear of embarrassment. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's disappointing someone. Maybe it's succeeding and feeling like you don't deserve it. Once the fear becomes visible, it loses much of its power. Real change doesn't happen when fear disappears. It happens when your brain slowly learns something new. That discomfort isn't danger. That uncertainty isn't always a threat. That failure isn't evidence you're incapable. It's evidence you're learning. Every time you take a small action despite the discomfort, you're sending your brain a new message. We survived. The next step becomes slightly easier. Then the next. And eventually, what once felt terrifying becomes ordinary. That's how confidence is actually built. Not before action, but because of it. The greatest trick self-sabotage ever plays is convincing you it's your personality, that you've always been this way, that you'll never change. But personalities aren't fixed. Habits aren't identities. And fear isn't prophecy. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do: keep you alive. The problem is, it was designed for a world full of predators, not job interviews, business ideas, creative work, or difficult conversations. Sometimes, the safest decision for your future feels like the riskiest decision today. And that's exactly why growth feels uncomfortable. Not because you're moving in the wrong direction, but because you're moving somewhere your brain has never been before. The next time that voice tells you to wait, to quit, or to stay where it's comfortable, remember this. It probably isn't your potential speaking. It's your protection. And once you learn the difference, you stop fighting yourself and finally start moving forward.